So, Chris, we've gone through the Kennedy Center and told them who we think that they should pick as their five honorees. So, next stop is the American Film Institute and who their one honoree should be this year. The most recent honoree was Jane Fonda, and I believe she might have only been the eighth or ninth woman in the 40-year history of it. So, who do you think that they should go for? Should they go back to back with another woman, or who's on the top of your wish list?
I put together some possible names, and let's first of all say, we know this is way off for the actual ceremony. It'll be next June 2015, but they usually announce their selection like early fall, like late September, early October, so they'll be probably meeting in the near future to make that decision. Because of what you said, my inclination, right or wrong, would be that it would go to a man this year. Them feeling like we've just honored a woman, an actress. I remember Shirley MacLaine was just 2 years before that, so with Mel Brooks in between. That means they haven't done just a pure actor in a while. The most logical person to me, if you look at kind of a short list of people that are in there in the right age range, which I would prefer it to be 60s, 70s myself, but we both know they've chosen people like Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg who were late 40s. I think they realized, that was a while ago, and I think they realized their mistake with that. But anyway, Robert Redford seems like the most likely, but I talked to somebody a couple of years ago who told me he might be turning this down because the mission of the AFI, the mission of Sundance are similar. They both probably go after a lot of the same charitable dollars and donations. That may be a reason why he's not accepted this year.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
But there have been people like Paul Newman that never did this. You know he had to have been asked. Katharine Hepburn never did it. So there have been people that were very logical, that just Cary Grant, of all people, participated in several of them, but they never... All of the names I've just said did accept Kennedy Center, and I wonder if it was because there was nothing that they had to do. They just sit there and accept the attention, and they don't make a speech, and they don't do anything like that.
Well, and I think with somebody like Cary Grant, remember, he, for instance, died rather suddenly. He wasn't in ill health. He was a little bit older. He might have been on their radar for sort of in years to come. I'm just looking over here at Wikipedia at the age range, and it's fascinating because back in '73, John Ford, who's 79, then James Cagney, who's 74, and they kind of pulled a Steven Spielberg. Their third honoree was Orson Welles, who was only 59. So it's just interesting. And there were only a smattering of women through the years. Bette Davis was in the fifth honoree. Then there were no more women until Lillian Gish, who was the 12th, and then Barbara Stanwyck. Interestingly, Jane Fonda hosted the Barbara Stanwyck tribute. Barbara Stanwyck had asked her if she would host, and anyway, it is interesting the dynamic of how they come up with the person. How much do you think in this instance the TV show matters to them? What kind of show they can put on?
But the biggest concern from what I've heard is it's a big fundraiser for the AFI. It's if you watch the ceremony of the event, it's set up similar look, kind of through the Golden Globes, lots of tables, lots of people, alcohol, food, people slapping backs all night. It's a party. It's a party, and they sell those tables to the studios, the networks, big, certain, an actor or a director might buy a whole table. And that's their biggest, and they also buy ads in the program for the night.
Right.
So think along those lines. Knock out anybody in your own mind, Paul and myself included, thinking along this way, that you don't think would drum up enough support to have a whole night devoted to them. And I even recall somebody that should seem like an obvious choice. I specifically remember, 4 years ago with Mike Nichols? They had wanted to do Mike Nichols for a while, but they couldn't internally justify it because they didn't know if they would even sell out. And certain people stepped forward, like a Meryl Streep. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Lots of people that had been in his movies, Dustin Hoffman, and said, look, do Mike Nichols, and we will not only participate, but we will help you sell this thing out.
Right. So with that in mind, I looked down your list of potential. Let's start with the men. Let's start with the fellas. And the name that pops out at me might seem an odd one, Ron Howard. Because there's somebody else.
Ron just turned 62, so, I mean, not 62, he turned 60, I think, in this past year. So he would be, I mean, I think he's been too young at this stage for a long time, but he has a lot of friends in the industry, having worked since he was 3 years old. And, of course, you could get a little bit into his TV background like they did with Mel Brooks. And I think that's a very logical choice for this. And really, the DeMille and the Kennedy Center, I think he's about to hit a lot of these different life achievement cycles.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's interesting, you know, they started off with a director, with John Ford, and then Orson Welles, William Wyler, Hitchcock, Frank Capra, and they seem to have gotten away from that in recent years with the directors. I mean, Mike Nichols was the last one. He's an EGOT champ. Before that, you had George Lucas. And then, I mean,
Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is really
you're right. You're right.
A multiple group of things, but I think he got, for this particular honor, I think it was more on his directing.
You're right. I guess because I just sort of.
And because, I mean, I think Mike Nichols and Mel Brooks, have they been the last two men? Well, maybe Morgan Freeman might have been in there.
Well, no, interestingly enough, with Mel Brooks at the time he was honored was 86. So if we sort of think, okay, Ron Howard just turned 60, and that's maybe at the younger end, is there any one left of sort of the old guard that should be honored? I mean, we had mentioned Gene Hackman in the Kennedy Center section. He has not gotten that. Now, he would again seem like a very logical person for this award. I mean, his extensive film career, two-time Oscar winner.
I think so. I mean, certainly in his 80s, he is retired.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't gotten anything since the DeMille Award, and that's been right at a decade, I think. So it makes me wonder if people have reached out from different groups and he's turned them down. That's a possibility. I don't know. I would love to see that. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. I would love to see him get a whole night devoted to him. And because we haven't seen him on anything in forever, I think it would garner a lot of support.
Yeah, what is nice about it in the last few years, it shifted though to, I'm just looking at this list again at Wikipedia and seeing since Michael Douglas, everyone's been at least 70. Mike Nichols, Morgan Freeman, believe it or not, was 74 3 years ago. I'm shocked that he's as old as that. So I don't know if the Ron Howard...
I think it has helped a lot that the broadcast networks don't have it anymore.
Right.
And then it went to USA for a while, and I'm sure they had some big input. In fact, that was, I believe, their first year in it was Tom Hanks. So that's no coincidence.
No.
But now that it's with TNT, which TNT is definitely a mass audience network, but tied in with Turner Classic Movies, where it also airs, I think that has probably helped them be a little more age appropriate.
Right. So yeah, it would be nice to see somebody like a Gene Hackman. And I just actually, you've done a little bit of, I guess, self-editing on this list, because really, other than Anthony Hopkins, most of the people that you've got here are in their 60s, 50s, and 60s. I guess Michael Caine, Anthony, would be a very credible honoree. I mean, there's a man whose film career dates back more than 50 years. He's still working. He's going to be in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. I mean, this is, I think if I look at that list among the men, I think I would be most pleased to see either Michael Caine or Ron Howard honored. And I think probably leaning towards Michael Caine, because Ron Howard he's still very active. I mean, right now he's editing his next picture. So, I mean, this is somebody who's not going anywhere for a long time.
Well, I put one name on the list that I think his time is right now for one of these, and he's had a very unusual career, and this is Bill Murray. But I don't know, in the past 4 or 5 years, I've gotten a real feeling, everything I ever read about him, see about him, his stature in the industry is actually growing. And you got people now in their 20s, 30s, 40s who look up to him as not just somebody that they enjoyed as a kid, but like an icon. I was reading the story just last night on the movie. He's got St. Vincent coming out with Melissa McCarthy in the fall, which he's an Oscar contender for possibly. And she was talking about she signed on as soon as she found out he had signed on, which he's hard to get to sign on for a movie. He's hard to find. He doesn't have an agent or a manager. Anyway, she was talking about that she signed on because he did. She'd always wanted to work with him, and this was her opportunity. But she also talked about how nervous she was even just to meet him. So I think his stature right now has never been greater, and it would be a fun evening.
It would, but I think that it's too much of a loose cannon. And I mean, the Toronto Film Festival wanted to honor him, have a Bill Murray Day, and they had to hold off until just a few days ago because they couldn't get a hold of him. So if I was the AFI, I would be very wary of giving him something that's going to involve thousands of people coming together on a specific time and date to honor him, and maybe he doesn't show up. So
well, he's not that unprofessional. He is eccentric, but he's not.
Yeah, I take everyone back to the year he was nominated for Lost in Translation and didn't win. So if you want unprofessional, then you just
along these lines, in terms of a comedic, a person who's now gotten the Kennedy Center honors, the Mark Twain Prize at the Kennedy Center, honorary Oscar recently, is Steve Martin. I could see a night built around him.
Yeah, and again, another well-liked fellow. So let's perhaps they'll give it to redress past wrongs. They'll give it to another woman. It's probably not likely. The list is shorter, topped off by Julie Andrews, who really...
Of the women, she's the one I feel is the most overdue.
But does it... I mean, it's interesting, and I like all things Barbara, but even she said she couldn't quite, Streisand that is, she couldn't believe she was getting the American Film Institute award when she'd only made 16 films. I mean, with all due respect to Dame Julie Andrews, I mean, how many pictures has she been in since SOB and 10 and Victor Victoria in the early 80s? I mean, it's over.
Well, I agree. The impact of the movies that she... I mean, I look back, you mentioned in Orson Welles. I mean, really, how many did he do? Mel Brooks. I mean, as much as I love Mel Brooks, how many films has he actually done?
Right.
So I don't know. I think it's more about you need to be in a certain range of quantity, but if you've got a Mary Poppins and a Sound of Music and then a few others that people certainly know you for, I think you're in that right range.
Yeah, and just looking down the list of women, there's Glenn Close, and you've got and then Jodie Foster, who got the Cecil B. DeMille last year. We're going to do another one on that. I think my feeling is whether it's Tom Hanks with this or her with that is, there's a two-letter word called no. I mean, that it would have been, I think in both instances, it would have been appropriate for them to say, you know what, come back to me in a decade. I'm still working. I mean,
let's wait.
Yes, not right now. Because you think about Peter O'Toole, who took a lot of convincing to take his honorary Oscar after, 7 losses, I believe, at that point, because he wanted to win a real one. And with these people, I mean, a Lifetime Achievement Award when you're 45 or 50 does seem a little far-fetched. The names that pop out at me of your women are Sally Field, pretty extensive filmography. Whoopi Goldberg, probably too extensive a filmography. There's a lot of duds in there, but there's a couple of good ones. And then I guess Diane Keaton and Jessica Lange, who are both quite active still and working. So they're all respectable, but I guess none of them feels like they're sort of at this point in the same league as Jane Fonda, as Shirley MacLaine. I don't know. It just feels slightly too soon for some of them. But maybe that's my...
It feels that way to me too. Also, the fact that several of the ones you just listed are in their 60s, Julie Andrews in her 70s. I think again, if we're just making a prediction, I would think because you haven't had an actor, I don't remember who the last, it was Morgan Freeman, the last just pure actor
Right.
in a while. You've had two actresses, and Mel Brooks, I know, as the last three. And Mike Nichols was right before that, and Morgan Freeman right before that. So it's been a while since an actor. I think it's going to be an actor.
Yep.
And so I don't think it's going to be Ron Howard this year. If I'm just looking at my list here, let's assume Robert Redford and Gene Hackman have been turning it down or have made it clear. I would think it was going to be, my biggest feeling would be either Denzel Washington,
Yeah.
who's right at 60, Steve Martin, or maybe a Jeff Bridges.
Perhaps. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. And we talked about Michael Caine for the Kennedy Center. Maybe
Michael
for
Caine,
this.
I think, would certainly accept it and be a good night. I just don't know. They did do Sean Connery a few years ago, so again, they have reached out to a British actor, and they have definitely done, like David Lean, and I mean they've had some British people along those lines.
Right.
The only actress, we talked about this in the Kennedy Center, I don't know that she would come over and accept it. And Olivia de Havilland certainly seems like a logical choice.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when you said it, Denzel Washington just struck me as just right for some reason. It just seemed like the perfect choice in terms of for the commercial aspects of it all, and as well as the artistic. So, but as with the Kennedy Center, we'll reconvene after they make the announcement and tell them whether we agree or disagree with them, and ask all of our viewers to join in with their thoughts. So, next up.